Alright, no intro today. I gotta go drive and pick up my goldfish from ballet practice, otherwise he's gonna drown me. Today's video is a follow-up to my previous video where I talked about armor prep and how armor currently works in the game, how it's gonna work in Edge of Fate, and why people are trying to get illegal rolls now and prepping for Edge of Fate. So if you want to know all about armor right now in the game and all that, check out that video. I will link it at the end of this one. But for today, we're specifically going to talk about exotic armor and illegal rolls on them, why you should get them, how you can get them efficiently and farm them out, and which armor you should target specifically on each class. Let's start with illegal rolls. What does that actually mean? So in Edge of Fate, Bungie is changing the armor system, and in basic terms, you're going to have specific stat spikes in armor. You're going to have a main stat, a secondary stat, and a third stat, and you're going to have spikes specifically in those. So going into Edge of Fate, we're going to have a bunch of armor sets. Here they are on screen now. You have Paragon, Grenadier, Specialist, Brawler, Bulwark, and Gunner. And there's specific combinations that you see on them. Like Paragon has Super Primary and Melee Secondary, which means you're going to have Intellect and then Strength on that particular armor set when they're dropping in terms of spikes. Now, going through this list, you're going to notice there's a couple of combinations that are missing. The main one being Weapons plus Super, which is basically Mobility plus Intellect currently. It's not on this list, which means you will not be able to find armor that has those spikes as a combination together. There's also other ones like Mobility plus Strength, which would be Weapons plus Melee, or Melee plus Recovery, or in this case, it would be Class. So those things are not possible to get with those combinations in spikes. That means currently in the game, you can get that armor right now, and that would be an illegal roll for Edge of Fate. So the idea is you want to farm out armor right now that have those combinations that are unavailable in Edge of Fate. That way, you can maximize your builds to get a 200 stat in whatever the main stat is for your build. So if you're going for a DPS build, you want to get 200 in either Weapons or Super, or if you're going for like a crowd control build, you know, wave content, then you want to maximize Grenades or Melee, or even getting like recovery up for hunters, for example. To show you guys an example, I'm currently farming out Sanguine Alchemy, and this is the best one I currently have. As you can see, I have my mobility spiked, and then as my second bonus, I have intellect. It's not the best roll in the world. It could be a little bit better, but the main two stats are mobility intellect, which is exactly what I'm going for. Before we go into how to farm stuff, let's talk about which exotics you should target on each character. So for Warlock, the number one current is absolutely going to be Sanguine Alchemy. It is insane, it's broken, it's the best DPS you can get on Warlocks easily, so that should be your number one. Number two is going to be a little bit of a thinking ahead kind of exotic, which is Starfire Protocol. Everything currently shown indicates that Starfire is going to be nuts in Edge of Fate, so I would definitely go for a Starfire role that has mobility and discipline, as Starfire is a grenade-based exotic, so you want discipline. Then you have things like Speaker Sight, which is a great support exotic, but you can also have it on during damage, so ideally you still want to go for mobility and intellect on that as well. Other notable exotics are Geomags, again, mobility, intellect, Verity's Brow, which would be discipline and mobility, and then Boots of the Assembler, which would just be mobility and whatever you want, but again, you can just put it into intellect just in case. For Titans, it's pretty straightforward. Your number one is going to be Curse of the Falling Star, giving you the best damage super in the game with Thunder Crash, although it is still bugged and Bungie still hasn't said they're going to fix it. Anyway, of course, you're going to want mobility and intellect on it to maximize your weapon damage as well as your super damage. Your number two is going to be Syntheseps. So for Synthos, there's actually two ways to go about this. Path number one is going the obvious, which is going to be mobility and strength, giving you weapon damage and then melee damage, because, you know, Synthos are a melee-based exotic. However, there are going to be some rare cases where you're going to want intellect on them instead. To give you a perfect example, the Ranix boss fight in Vesper's Host, where you use the Behemoth super to try to give maximum damage in that encounter. That is by far and away the best super to use for that encounter, and Behemoth is a super, therefore you need intellect for super damage. So if you're somebody that doesn't own a Star Eater scale exotic class item for your Titan and you just want to use base Behemoth with Synthos, then you might want to save an intellect roll just in case. Going back to the strength roll for a second, there's a couple of other exotics you might look out for a strength roll, those being Worm Gods and Insurmountable Skullfort. You can go for mobility and strength on those if you'd like. Then you have Crest of Apalupi, which I think is going to be a little bit underrated going to this expansion. It's basically a little bit worse version of Defibrillating Blast that we currently have right now for Arc Titans. So I'd say roll with that, particularly with mobility to buff your weapon damage when you're sitting in a barricade. And likewise, Hazardous Propulsion, same thing. You're going to be sitting behind a barricade and using it for your missiles. I would again save a roll with mobility on that. And these last three are just going to be predictions from me. I think they will be fun exotics to use in Edge of Fate. Those are going to be Ashen Wakes, Actium War Rig, and Peacekeepers. For Ashen Wakes, you're going to want to go Discipline since it's grenade-based, so Discipline plus Mobility. For Actium War Rig and Peacekeepers, you go with Mobility plus whatever you want, but ideally, you would just go for Intellect on those two. Lastly, we have Hunters. We're just going to break this down into categories for the exotics, so the first category is going to be DPS. This is going to include things like Celestial Nighthawk, Mask of Baccharis, and Star Eater Scales. All of these, you want to go straight to Mobility and Intellect, pumping your weapon damage and your super damage, particularly for Celestial Nighthawk. Then you have the melee category, which features things like Assassin's Cowl, Mask of Fealty, Liar's Handshake, and so on. For these, you want to go with Mobility and Strength, as that is an illegal roll combination for Edge of Fate, so that's ideal in that sense, but also obviously they're melee-based exotics, so you want your melee stat pumped. Then you kind of have the miscellaneous section. This has things like Orpheus Rig, Falcons, or Radiant Dance Machines, where you want to pump your weapon damage, so Mobility, and then as a bonus, put in Intellect because you want to get your super back as fast as possible to abuse things like Tethered. Now the next question is going to be, how can I farm exotics because I don't have unlimited engrams to use, right? So the first two obvious ones that everyone knows are going to be Lost Sectors, which drop exotic engrams, and then Nightfalls, which just drop straight up exotics as soon as you complete the activity. Now getting exotics to drop from Nightfalls is both a good and a bad thing. The bad part is, it's an RNG simulator. You know, you have to pray that you get the exotic you're trying to actually farm for and not some garbage. But there are two benefits to this. First, you can actually use your Ghost mod and put mobility on it to make exotics drop with a mobility spike. The other good thing is saving up Ascendant Shards, which are going to be key for the next thing we're talking about. And that's going to be Rahool's crusty ass. So as you can see, I have a bunch of exotics saved up that I can decrypt at him. The thing you want to do is go to Focus Decoding here, and then go to the third page right here. And over here, you can choose whatever exotic you want and target farm it at the cost of 1 engram, 60k Glimmer, and then 2 Ascendant Shards. That's where the shards come in handy. While we're here, let's just do a demonstration. I'm going to pop an exotic right here for Sanguine Alchemy and hope for a better roll that I already got. So I pop one, and bang, I got a 69, but unfortunately, the spikes are not in the correct slots. I got a bunch of strength that I have no use for, but you get the idea. So you notice that you need 3 different materials to get these exotic decodings from Rahool. And that's what we're talking about next. Besides Nightfalls and Lost Sectors, how else can we efficiently farm these things in the game? And this is the thing that most people don't talk about. You might have noticed I've had footage in the background showing either the Nether or the Breach executable activity from Echoes. And there's actually reasonings for this. So for Breach executable specifically, you can farm a metric F ton of Glimmer from that activity, plus also get an exotic at the end by dunking into the machine. For Glimmer, if you put on a Glimmer Ghost mod and then combine a tonic plus the Tome of Want, you can easily get something like 200 to 250k Glimmer per run in a 10-minute time span from this activity. If you do the expert version and get lucky getting those gold cubes to drop on the ground, you get double Glimmer for dunking those, so you can make even more. Now for Nether, believe it or not, this is actually an insane farm. Before I explain, let me talk about the tonics and the Tome of Want to make sense of everything. So for tonics, a lot of people just don't use these resource tonics. Specifically, I'm talking about the Glimmer one, which gives you a lot over time, and the tonic of Ascendant Shards, the exotic one, which, well, it gives you Ascendant Shards that you get passively from completing activities and defeating combatants. Just put this thing on, and you'll passively get shards while farming whatever you're doing in the game. For the Tome of Want, it's actually even better. Every single encounter you complete, you will get your reward for Tome of Want. So there's 3 boss encounters, that's 3 drops. And what you're going to want to put on this is anything in the first slot, so I put Glimmer typically, but you can put it in like weapons or armor if you want. In the second slot, you put in this exotic scripture, which says potential rewards, alloy, shard, or exotic engram. And you'll notice if you put in a currency scripture, which is Glimmer, that means every single time this pops, you will get an exotic engram. So that's 3 exotic engrams per run in the Nether. Or if you put a weapon scripture, then you get 3 Ascendant Alloys, or Armor Scripture for 3 Ascendant Shards. Another plus side is, while you're doing a Nether run to actually activate these scriptures, you can also loot chests to get a ton of Glimmer. I believe it's 7,400 per chest that you find. And you also have chances of getting more scriptures while you're doing the run, so you're not draining all your resources immediately, and you can actually recoup some of the costs as you're doing the activity. So with this in mind, ideally, you want to throw on an Ascendant Shard tonic, and then a Tome of Want for either shards or exotic engrams, and then go spam either the Nether, or perhaps some like dungeon encounter where you're farming maybe Run 9, or maybe you're in Grasp of Avarice farming legendary armor, and you just keep getting shard after shard after shard, or a shard plus exotic, 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 and next thing you know, you'll be full on both to go to Rahool. And let's close this out with Rahool. So don't forget, he has this material exchange right here in the first menu, and every week you can get a bunch of cores for free 3 times, and you can also get alloys and shards. This one gives you 1 shard for 10,000 glimmer and then 10 enhancement prisms. You can do this 3 times, and then you can go to the middle row here, and it's the same thing except it's 50k glimmer, but you get a bunch of prisms from like Nightfalls, for example, so it's easy to recoup those, and I just showed you how to get a ton of glimmer very easily. Thank you for following the channel. In the middle of the video, I'm just going to leave that in as a blooper. So you can get your materials and then get some shards back through this material exchange. So there you have it, my guide on how you can farm illegal armor rolls for your exotics in time for the Edge of Fate expansion. If you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing today. It does help the channel grow and is much appreciated. If you want to go the extra mile, you can leave a like and or comment below as well. If you don't know what to leave as a comment, you could put exotic as the comment. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.